Sir, please buy my bike. My mom is hungry.
It started with a sound that didn't belong on that quiet Temple, Texas street. The low thunder of 3 motorcycles rolling through a sun-baked neighborhood, engines cutting the afternoon heat like something heavy moving through still water. 3 riders came in slow, their leather vests worn like a second skin, their shadows stretching long across bleached concrete. Curtains shifted. A man on his porch stood up and watched. Even the cicadas seemed to go quiet. But beneath the rumble of chrome and steel, another sound rose, smaller, careful, and achingly out of place. "Sir, would you buy my bike?" The engines dropped to an idle. At the edge of the sidewalk stood a boy, maybe 8, in a striped shirt and scuffed sneakers. Beside him leaned a black BMX, and in both hands he held a piece of torn cardboard, the letters written in the deliberate print of a child trying hard to look certain. For sale, $35. The lead rider, big, still, built like a man who had seen worse things than this and never stopped caring, cut his engine and swung off. He walked toward the boy and crouched down to eye level. The boy didn't flinch. His name was Ethan, and his eyes held something no 8-year-old should carry: resolve. Behind him, barely visible beneath a live oak tree, a woman sat slumped against the bark, pale, motionless, wrapped in a blanket despite the Texas heat. The biker's jaw went tight as Ethan spoke again, his grip firm on the sign. "Mom hasn't eaten since Monday." Before we dive into this incredible story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I love seeing how far this channel reaches. And if you enjoy powerful emotional stories with real-life lessons, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Ethan Harper was 8 years old and already knew how to be quiet in a way that made adults uncomfortable. He wasn't loud about his pain. He didn't slam doors or throw things. He just watched, the electric bill on the counter, the empty shelves his mother pretended not to see, the way she sat at the kitchen table some mornings staring at nothing, thinking she was alone. The black BMX had been his father's idea. A birthday gift, picked out together at the shop on Adams Avenue, Ryan Harper's hand on his son's shoulder saying, "That one, buddy. That's the one." Ethan rode it when the house got too quiet. Down the block and back, down and back, until his legs burned and his mind went still. Today he had walked it to the sidewalk and written $35 on a piece of cardboard. He had done the math himself. He knew what a bag of groceries cost. He knew his mother wouldn't ask for help. He knew the bike was the only thing he owned worth selling. So he sold it. Colton McAllister didn't become the kind of man people stepped aside for by accident. 44 years old, former Army Ranger out of Fort Hood. 2 deployments and 100 decisions he'd had to live with ever since. He wasn't loud about any of it. He didn't need to be. There was something in the way he moved, unhurried, deliberate, taking up exactly the space he needed, that told people everything before he opened his mouth. Jesse Ramirez rode to his left. Knuckles, they called him, for reasons nobody fully explained anymore. He was the noise in the group, cracking jokes at the wrong moment, laughing too loud, filling every silence before it could settle. The men who knew him understood why. Silence cost him. Tyler Boone rode to his right. Diesel. 6'3" and built like a fence post. He said maybe a dozen words on a long day. But he noticed everything. When Colton crouched in front of Ethan Harper, he didn't feel pity. He felt recognition. He had served beside men who never made it home. He knew exactly what their families looked like standing on the other side of that absence. He was looking at one now. Colton asked him simply, "What happened?" And Ethan told him the way children tell hard things, in pieces, without drama, as though the facts were heavy enough on their own. His father, Ryan, worked construction. A site accident outside Temple, 11 months ago. Nobody's fault, the report said, which meant nobody was responsible. which meant the insurance company found reasons to delay. The mortgage didn't wait. The bills didn't wait. His mother worked every hour she could, but a nurse's assistant's salary wasn't built to carry a household alone, and grief is its own kind of exhaustion. Then a man came to the door. Clean shirt, warm handshake, soft voice. Blake Hensley. He said he could help. Temporary refinancing, he called it, just to bridge the gap, just to buy her time. Megan signed the papers. She was still sleeping in Ryan's hoodie. She wasn't reading fine print. What she signed was a quitclaim deed transfer. Within 6 weeks, the house belonged to Blake Hensley. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday. Colton listened to all of it without moving. His expression didn't change. But beneath his crossed arms, both hands had gone completely still. Colton walked back to the bikes and told them what the boy had said. All of it. He kept his voice flat, just the facts, the way he'd learned to deliver bad news a long time ago. Knuckles stopped smiling. That alone was enough to make Diesel look up. Jesse Ramirez was not a quiet man. He processed the world out loud, filled every gap with noise, turned everything into a joke before it could turn into something that hurt. So when Colton finished talking and Knuckles just stood there, jaw tight, staring at the pavement, that silence landed hard. "I know that name," he said finally. "Blake Hensley." He said it like something sour. "He's not just here. He's been working the whole region. Military widows, mostly. Finds them right after the funeral, before the paperwork clears, before they've had time to think straight. Gets signatures fast. Moves faster." Nobody spoke for a moment. Then Diesel, who hadn't said a word since they'd stopped, looked up from where he'd been studying the cracked sidewalk. "That's not business," he said quietly. "That's hunting." The 3 men looked at each other. The engines stayed cold. They were not leaving the temple. Colton didn't pace. He didn't punch anything. He sat on the curb with his phone and started making calls. First was the Veterans Legal Clinic in Waco, a small outfit run by 2 attorneys who had seen every variation of predatory deed fraud that Central Texas had produced in the last decade. They knew what a quitclaim transfer looked like when it was buried. They knew Blake Hensley's type by name if not by face. They told Colton what they needed and he wrote it down. Second was a reporter. Local paper, small operation, but she had broken 3 property fraud stories in 2 years and had a reputation for not letting go. Third was the county clerk's office, where Diesel spent 40 minutes at a public records terminal saying nothing to anyone, until he wasn't saying nothing. He flagged a notary timestamp that preceded the official signing date by 11 days. He found 2 gaps in the filing chain that had no clean explanation. These were not angry men swinging blindly. They were men who understood that the only justice Blake Hensley couldn't survive was the documented kind, the kind that holds up in a courtroom in front of a judge with no room left to maneuver. They built it carefully. Every call, every record, every page. The Temple Chamber of Commerce luncheon was Blake Hensley's natural habitat. Pressed shirts, firm handshakes, the comfortable murmur of men who believed their reputations were solid because no one had tested them yet. He worked the room before sitting down. A word here, a laugh there, the practiced ease of someone who had never once been caught. He didn't notice Colton until he was already seated across from him. Colton said nothing at first. He set a manila folder on the white tablecloth between them and let it sit there. Blake looked down at it the way a man looks at something he already suspects is bad news. Inside, the quitclaim transfer, the notary discrepancy report, a list of 7 other families, a signed statement from the Veterans Legal Clinic in Waco. Blake looked up. Colton's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You prey on widows," he said. "That ends today." The conversation nearest to them stopped first. Then the next one. The room didn't erupt. It went still, the particular stillness of people realizing they are witnessing something they will not forget. Everyone was watching. Everyone was listening. The documents were on the table in plain sight. There was nothing left to maneuver around. Nobody orchestrated what happened next. It didn't need orchestrating. The reporter had her recorder on the table before Colton finished his first sentence. She wasn't there by accident. She had been watching Blake Hensley for 18 months and hadn't had enough to print. Now she had a folder full of it, sitting in public with witnesses on all sides. The county clerk's representative was 3 seats down. She looked at the notary timestamp for approximately 4 seconds before she stopped eating her lunch. Blake reached for the language he always reached for. Standard agreements. Willing signatures. Market corrections. The words came out smooth and practiced, and landed nowhere. The room was already reading. People who had watched him work charity auctions and ribbon cuttings for years were looking at the documents, then looking at him, then looking back at the documents. His composure didn't shatter. It just drained, like something quietly unplugged. By the time he stood to leave, the room had already decided. No one rose. No one extended a hand. Conversations that had paused simply didn't resume in his direction. Blake Hensley walked out of that room alone. The folder stayed on the table. It wasn't going anywhere. The Veterans Legal Clinic filed for the emergency injunction on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, a judge had reviewed the notary discrepancy and the filing gaps and signed the order. The sale of Megan Harper's home was halted pending full investigation. Megan got the news in a waiting room with plastic chairs and a water-stained ceiling tile she'd been staring at for 2 hours. A paralegal, young, maybe 25, holding a manila folder, sat down beside her and said it plainly. "You're not losing your home. Not today." Megan didn't cry. She pressed her hand over her mouth and sat very still and breathed. The long, slow exhale of someone who had been braced for impact for so long they'd forgotten what it felt like to stand upright. The community had already started moving. A fundraiser, quietly seated by 3 men nobody thought to credit publicly, spread through Temple the way good things sometimes do. Person to person, no announcement needed. Within a week it had covered 3 months of mortgage payments and cleared every outstanding utility bill. Neighbors who had never knocked on her door brought groceries anyway. Temple, Texas was remembering what it was made of. They came back on a Saturday morning, engines quiet as they rolled up to the house on Clover Street. Ethan was already outside. The black BMX leaned against the porch railing where it belonged, back where his father's hands had helped pick it out. He stood beside it with his arms at his sides, watching the 3 men climb off their bikes. Diesel carried a box. He didn't explain it. He just walked up, opened it, and lifted out a helmet. Matte black, Texas flag stripe along the side, clean and solid and exactly right. He set it on Ethan's head with both hands, adjusted the chin strap until it fit, and stepped back without a word. Colton crouched down one last time. "You did good, kid," he said. Standing out there alone like that took guts. Ethan had no words for what he felt. He just nodded, the way his father used to nod when words weren't the point. Megan stood in the doorway, steady on her feet now, watching the men who had shown up when the system looked the other way. She didn't need to say anything either. The engines turned over. The bikes pulled away slow, rolling down Clover Street toward the long Texas afternoon. Ethan raised one hand and held it there until they were gone. In Texas, we protect our own.
And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it or learned something new, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps support the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop your thoughts or questions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.